we provide knowledge transfer sessions on products, solutions, services, and support. For the first time ever, we are offering a series dedicated to roles: architects, developers, and today administrators. By the end of today's session, you will have a clear understanding of how to best maintain your applications on SAP BTP. A very warm welcome and thank you for joining our third episode of the SAP BTP Guidance Framework series, paving the way for administrators to operate efficiently on SAP BTP. I have here with me my dear colleagues, Boris Zarska, Product Manager for DevOps with SAP BTP, and Stephanie Jach, Product Manager for SAP Cloud ALM for Operations. As a seasoned product manager at SAP, Boris spearheads the DevOps narrative for SAP customers, leveraging SAP BTP, while also overseeing pertinent lifecycle management initiatives. His primary aim is to empower SAP customers to embrace a more agile approach in developing and operating their applications on SAP BTP, all the while maintaining optimal levels of control. Renowned for his expertise, Boris frequently takes the stage at both SAP-hosted and external events. Stephanie is a solution expert and runs customer-facing activities around operations on SAP BTP. She aims to empower customers to benefit from using SAP Cloud ALM for SAP BTP. Stephanie joined SAP in 2015, starting in SAP Consulting. Beforehand, she has worked for SAP partners, both in various external and internal consulting positions, being recognized as an expert for application lifecycle management topics. She holds a bachelor degree in business informatics. And now, before handing over to our experts for today, let me quickly share an overview of the entire series, as well as what is to come. So we already had two sessions, one dedicated, well, first one is an overall session for everyone, but also with a dedication to architects. The second one was dedicated to developers, and now one for administrators. Starting next week, we have two new series. One provides an overview and update of all the pillars of SAP BTP. And the other one is an entire series for you on how to master data operations with SAP BTP. Those are deep dive sessions guiding architects, developers, and administrators. If you have not yet registered, please scan the QR code. And with this, let me stop the sharing and over to you, Boris.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks a lot for joining also from my end. And yeah, very delighted to guide you through our offering for the administrators today. Let me briefly share my screen and then we can get it started. Yeah, again, I mean, after we took a look at the architects and developers today, we will focus on the administrators. But of course, we will also touch upon some topics where also administrators have to get an understanding how processes look like and how they can enable the other key peers and colleagues then accordingly. Those of you who should have joined previous episodes of our series, for those it will be quite familiar here with the overview of the SAP BTP Guidance Framework, where we want to provide a central access point for architecting, implementing, and operating enterprise-grade solutions on the SAP Business Technology Platform. And yeah, we have a lot of offerings around decision guides, reference architectures, methodologies, but also many best practices. And as Tanya outlined, thanks a lot for the kind introduction, by the way, Tanya. Yeah, we really now want to provide target group specific best practices here. And after we have looked on architects and developers today, we will focus on all that comes up around operating your applications with the right performance and availability on the platform. And when we take a deeper look, we have different offerings there. The most important or the starting point there is the SAP BTP Administrator's Guide. So we will look a little bit deeper on the content it does provide and the guidance. And you will learn why it's a very good starting point to learn more about the platform overall. Of course, we also have touch points with DevOps in the sense that DevOps does comprise development, but also operations tasks. And we will focus on how you as administrator can enable your team to benefit from a more agile approach, with nevertheless the option to have more control when it comes towards propagation of the changes towards production. And in addition, we have also security recommendations, because security, of course, also plays an elementary role, especially when it comes to cloud development. That's why I want to briefly also outline what we have around those recommendations. You find recommendations in the SAP Help portal, and you can filter them by component from the Business Technology Platform, also by priority. And we have also here different phases in the so-called secure operations map. And there we just tried to have an overview of different aspects you see around organization, processes, the application, the environment, the infrastructure, and which just allows you then to deep dive and get best practices along those different aspects. I want to very briefly give you a glimpse on what we have there. You see here are the security recommendations, and you could now either filter by priority, saying, okay, I want to filter the critical ones, or you have the corresponding component you want to look at. Let's, for example, take SAP Build Work Zone. And you see, you get then a lot of recommendations around audit data, destination handling, identity providers, and you name it, right? Let me just open it up, and you see you get also information when corresponding recommendations were updated. And with that, you can really deep dive on our best practices along that. But let's start with what we will look into more detail as part of our session today. So I will start, not surprisingly, with the administrator's guide, because again, I think that's a very good entry point, and we can use it to go through the relevant phases you have to consider as administrator of applications on the Business Technology Platform. Then I will hand over for the second part to my colleague Stephanie, and she will outline in detail what SAP Cloud ALM does bring, especially for operating applications. Here we have a central approach where you can get also an overview of hybrid scenarios, meaning if BTP is only one part. And Stephanie will outline what we have, especially for the SAP Business Technology Platform. And then, I will again wrap up the whole session, give you also some guidance where you can make the next steps in terms of learning. And we will also have some time, of course, for your questions. And happy to answer them at the end of our session. Okay, let's start with the SAP BTP Administrator's Guide. Again, it's also, documentation, but here we really try to extract the important aspects from the SAP Help portal documentation into an easy to read documentation, meaning it's not giving all the details in full detail, but you get a very good understanding of different aspects and can then deep dive into the different main documentation where needed. For those of you who might know the best practices guide for SAP BTP, that was the starting point for our administrator's guide. But then we decided, just realized it does make more sense to focus on actual target groups. That's why we said, okay, let's focus that guide on the administrators, pull out certain things that are more relevant for the architects and also for the developers. Because it's just easier to consume, and yeah, you nevertheless get an idea how everything comes together. It does provide also baseline information like what are basic platform concepts, or what's about a shared responsibility model between you and SAP, where you do consume platform as a service offering with the SAP Business Technology Platform. We do provide checklists for different aspects just to make it easy to get started. Also, we have a planning section. Think about aspects like governance model, accounting, meaning how do you structure your accounts, security and compliance again. And finally, we guide you then through the process of the life cycle of an application from setting up an environment to then deploying and delivering it and finally operating. Let's start with the first aspect, the shared responsibility model. And I don't want to go into full detail, but as you have this offering of a platform coming as a service, of course, large parts of the operations tasks are performed by SAP, meaning all that belongs in terms of infrastructure, underlying infrastructure and operating system updates and other aspects around it. So that doesn't mean that there are no tasks left for administrators. No, don't worry. It's just slightly different. I mean, of course, your development teams come up with the applications, meaning they create them, and you have to take care then to deliver them and also to operate them later on. And for that, you also provide corresponding meaningful account structures for your different development teams and can also handle them. There are some overlaps, like, for example, around SAP HANA cloud handling. Just to give you an example, I mean, there are certain tasks performed by SAP in terms of, for example, doing backups in the background. Nevertheless, we also want to grant you self-services, for example, when it comes to applying the latest updates, because there might be some additional actions required from your end to verify that everything works out like before. So you might want to test that in one account before performing it in the production account and so on. So that is something you can do, and where we do provide those self-services accordingly. The SAP BTP Administrators Guide does provide guidance when it comes also to account structuring. So we do outline concepts. For example, also in cloud, we say it does make sense to have a staged environment where you might have, for example, a development, a test, and a production sub-account, just to make sure that you can also try out changes before bringing them into the production environment. We do provide it for the different environments like Cloud Foundry and Kyma if you rather want to have a Kubernetes-based development environment. Also here, we do provide checklists, we do provide examples, and for example, also come up with proposals for naming conventions for your sub-accounts to give you really a head start that you can really come up with a meaningful setup right from the beginning and don't have to start and later on would wish you could start all over again, right? That is not required. Here's an example of an account structure. Very simple. On top layer, you see the global account as representation of your contract. And on the lowest level, we have here staged environments. You see distributed or separated for different departments. Here, for example, you might have a team that does perform development for sales department or for the finance department. And you see we have here a three-staged environment with development, test, production. You can also use directories, several levels, as structuring elements in between. Like here we see we have one directory for the sales organization. And then you can also assign labels, meaning metadata for those. As it's easier to get it when you see it, let's briefly bring that up here in an example account. Here I have a trial account, so you can also get a trial access without costs. And you see underneath, I've created here three directories, one for finance, sales, and one for shared services. And for example, for the finance one, you see again here we have a dev, test, prod sub-account. Here we have same for the sales, and for the shared services, we have, for example, an HANA Cloud instance that you want to run centrally just for cost reasons, and then here make sure that controlled subaccounts can access and use it then for their scenarios as well. And when it comes to creating, for example, new subaccounts, you can also specify quite easily here labels. For example, if I say, okay, I want to have an owner specified, that's quite easy you can do. And you see already it does bring up already defined or used labels. Here we have a label for a cost center you can quite easily specify. And you can then also easily filter for that. So for example, I have here one assigned label for this cost center 4711, and you see then only those to come up. For another cost center, you see then the sales to come up, and that just makes it easier to handle that accordingly. Yeah. Also, when you take a look at one of those sub-accounts, let's maybe take this one, this FinDev one. You again see here then the labels that have been assigned. You see you have spaces in the sense of Cloud Foundry that allow you to then further have another structuring element. But that depends on the actual use case, and you can then handle that accordingly. When it comes to SAP HANA Cloud, I have here the SAP HANA Cloud Central. That's one of the application-specific UIs that we do provide on top of the cockpit. Here I have a stopped instance, but just to give you an idea what you can do, if I go to the configuration here, I can quite easily then perform an instance mapping, meaning I say, okay, this is a central HANA instance, and I want that instance to be used by other sub-accounts. Here I do provide corresponding IDs of the Cloud Foundry environment. Here you might see this F7A6. Let's just go back to this account here with the overview. Sorry, here on the general one, you see that's exactly here this org unit of the Cloud Foundry, and with that we just define this sub-account can use this shared SAP HANA Cloud instance. It's pretty straightforward then to have a shared resource there. When it comes to setting up account structures, I mean, you saw there might be some aspects around that. You create sub-accounts, you might create spaces, perform or do entitle services like HANA Cloud or perform other configurations. Of course, you can do that manually, but we recommend to have an automated approach here, which just makes things easier. You can have also some kind of self-services. And one way to do that is, for example, to use Terraform. Terraform is an infrastructure as a code software tool. It's some kind of de facto standard. And here SAP developed a provider which allows you to benefit from infrastructure as a code handling for then managing your SAP BTP accounts. Meaning you could have an automation, and whenever you onboard a new team, you create or perform a corresponding Terraform command that then creates that infrastructure for the team, and just make sure that you have a standardization, everything behaves the same. And you see, you can use it to manage global accounts, directories, sub-accounts, entitlements, subscriptions, service bindings, you name it, right? And that's just one way to reduce manual efforts in the go. And there are some other tools for administrators you should be aware of. I mean, we have seen the cockpit, we have seen service-specific tools, like the SAP HANA Cloud Central. Another example is if you have SAP Build Code, where you have a control tower, or the ABAP landscape portal, if you have SAP BTP ABAP environment in use, they can also perform certain administrative tasks. The cockpit on the other side is to handle the sub-accounts, entitlements, and so on. And I will also outline in a few minutes what you can do on top of that. For automation, I already mentioned the Terraform provider, but we have also other automation capabilities that might be relevant here. On example, the SAP Automation Pilot Service. While Terraform rather focuses on infrastructure automation, the SAP Automation Pilot allows you to reduce manual operations efforts, allow around operating your task, be it around alert remediation or performing auto-scaling or having some other health checks you want to perform, and then providing inputs also with SAP Cloud ALM. Yeah, that's all possible around that. And for that, Automation Pilot does bring catalogs of automated commands you can then compile into larger actions that shall be performed when something comes up with your application. I already mentioned SAP Cloud ALM. Yeah, so that is really our central observability and operations platform, also for SAP Business Technology Platform. So you can perform lifecycle management capabilities, manage and monitor your cloud-based SAP applications, and it ensures a smooth and easy implementation and operation of corresponding SAP cloud applications. It can also perform actions on on-premise and private cloud systems. But yeah, it's really an elementary part. That's why we also will focus a little bit on that in the second part of our session today. Other examples are SAP for Me, for example. It's a personalized dashboard to manage SAP products and licenses and system health. So it's also a very good entry point to request, for example, instances and so on. And then we have also, for example, enterprise architecture frameworks. It's not in focus, of course, for the administrator, but you should be aware of that, for example, with LeanIX, you can also plan changes and supporting the cloud transformation and optimizing the portfolio. So where the architects come up with changes, and then of course it's important that they plan on the latest information, and that then might also have implications for you as administrator to handle that accordingly. In the SAP BTP cockpit, you can also access transparency on costs. That's of course playing a major aspect if you handle those landscapes for the different teams, and then have to make sure that depending on the usage of the different teams, you then charge them internally somehow, so that this is clear. For example, you see here a view in the SAP BTP cockpit where you see, okay, the monthly usage of the cloud credits. If you have a consumption-based usage there, you see how services are used and total usage, and can then break that down. And if you want to perform internal cross-charging, you could split those costs either by directory, saying, okay, I had my directory for the sales, and here I have my directory for the finance departments, and then see exactly how they are using BTP and can cross-charge them accordingly. You can also use labels to charging. We've seen before, I quite easily assigned a label for the cost center owner, and then you could then just sum up what costs are generated for all accounts that have the corresponding label assigned. If you have to make it more explicit, we can also perform cost distribution for shared services. Think of SAP HANA Cloud, mentioned before, where you say, okay, either you have a fixed rate, how many users, or you do really metering in detail, okay, how much of the resources are used by that application from that department versus that department, and then you can distribute the costs accordingly. When it now comes to apply DevOps or enable your teams to benefit from a more agile development approach, I will also sketch how you can set the stage for those teams. The normal task for enabling the teams for a more agile approach is first you have to set up some kind of pipeline. Here the SAP Business Technology Platform brings a pipeline as a service offering, meaning you don't have to bring an own CI/CD infrastructure. It does connect against the Git-based repository that's not coming from the platform itself, because many of our customers already made a choice there. So we just think it does make sense to connect with all of those. Nevertheless, where we can bring a difference is with the pipeline templates, because we can focus on typical SAP BTP development use cases like building a cloud application programming CAP extension on BTP, and then you have a running pipeline that performs a build and can perform tests and deployment really in minutes. And that is then used by the development teams, for example, using the Business Application Studio. They push their changes then into the Git repository, which would then automatically trigger a pipeline run, performing certain tests and the builds, and providing direct feedback to the developer meaning on the quality of the change. And that's, of course, one of the drivers of the agility. You really get feedback if there are some issues with what you have done in terms of building or tests you have to perform, or also in terms of compliance, for example, for security reasons. When it comes to delivery, meaning you have qualified your change, meaning you have a qualified release candidate, you could either perform the release directly from the pipeline, or you hand over into a more controlled delivery landscape. And here we say the pipeline can automatically trigger also transport. They can centrally define a delivery landscape and define who's allowed to perform changes on which node, and have also a central log file for auditing reasons where you see exactly who performed which change, when and where, and can come up with, for example, a 4I principle or some kind of approval process. And for that, SAP Cloud ALM can also orchestrate an SAP Cloud Transport Management, where you have higher level change management processes, again with approval, or also the option to bring in changes from different environments into one overarching feature or change document. Think of the case where you have a hybrid application, meaning you change something, you have an UI developed on BTP, you might have maybe some integration flows, you might have also maybe some changes in the backend for an API enablement. And here you can really bring all those different changes from the different environments into one change in SAP Cloud ALM, and then control the delivery across the different environments in a centralized way then. Also, SAP Cloud ALM is then used to observe the application, and for that it does work together with local observability tools from the platform. Yeah, again, Stephanie will guide you through that in a few minutes from now, but just to give you an idea, there might come alerts from the platform that do show up then in central monitoring dashboards on SAP Cloud ALM, and Cloud ALM could then deep dive into logging on the platform, or perform automated tasks again by calling SAP Automation Pilot commands as mentioned before. To give you an idea of how the pipeline setup does look like, because it's much easier if you see that live, I also brought up a short demo here. Here you see the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service. It's pretty simplistic. You have a way to store securely credentials, like for your Git repositories, which you can connect here. Very simple. You give it a name, how it is called here, and here you have the clone URL, which you just take here from your Git repository. Here's one example. You just copy it over, and that's mainly it. You can then specify the credentials, and if it should run in your own backend system, you can have also a cloud connector to the Git repository. And here you can then configure the webhook, meaning making sure that the Git repository can trigger then the pipeline running on the Business Technology Platform. And the main part is here the pipeline. And here I can say, okay, please connect against my repository. I can also specify a branch for which I can use wildcards if I have several branches that shall trigger always the same pipeline. And here we have the pipeline templates. And you see, for example, here we have Kyma, Cloud Foundry, ABAP Frontend Server, Integration Suite. That one is a typical pipeline template for a CAP application, where I say, okay, I specify how the build should look like. I can perform static code checks. I can perform additional checks. I have here maybe WebDriver IO tests I want to execute. I can trigger Subanar cube scans. I can here perform the deployment, or I trigger a transport, meaning when everything is green, then a transport is triggered. And the good thing is development does only have to know where it's coming from. It does not have to know how the delivery landscape does look like or whatever. It's a real separation of concern here. For development, we have had the other session. So we have here also the developer's guide. So I will keep that short. In terms of delivery, again, stressing the overall idea where we say, okay, we have a private cloud with the typical transport system that is part of the ABAP server. Then we have the cloud transport management service that does take care for the SAP cloud changes, which can work together with pipeline, meaning you do use a pipeline to qualify your changes, but as soon as the development team came up with a qualified release candidate, you trigger automatically then a transport in Cloud Transport Management. And SAP Cloud ALM could then orchestrate the changes from both environments in a synchronized way. That's the overall concept. And you see, also here we have SAP Cloud ALM as with a very important role for handling and implementing your applications. But as mentioned before, we also have Cloud ALM for operations capability. And for that, I'm very happy to now hand over to Stephanie to make a deep dive into those. Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you very much, and also welcome from my end. So let me quickly take over the sharing, and then we'll directly proceed with the SAP Cloud ALM for operations area. So what is it behind, and what is also our motivation whenever we work on the topics, when we tell our story, our vision, our ambition, and what we would like to achieve. So with the Cloud ALM for operations, we are supporting you as a customer or as a partner or using our SAP applications to get support alongside the end-to-end observability, meaning to monitor. These can be questions, for example, if you have a landscape which is cloud and on-premise or hybrid, as Boris also mentioned, how can I monitor it best? Here we are focusing on the BTP part. So here is it, if the BTP is center stage, you for sure also would like to have this as the picture. There might be SAP and non-SAP solutions. Okay, for sure, I would love you to just use SAP services, but let's be honest, we do whatever we can to support, to offer you a one-stop shop, kind of a landing place for your central and your global observability. And with all our APIs, which I will briefly touch on later, you can then also include non-SAP monitoring data. We are trying and looking at operation perspective or operations from various angles, like customers and partners and so on. And we have a lot of use cases which do answer the questions or monitor your applications from various perspectives. And last but not least, it's not about the problem detection. We also support you as best as possible with initiating the resolution. And this starts with being informed on and finding and observing a certain situation. So what are we offering here? So we offer a lot of services, and these are just a few brands which we are supporting. If you would like to learn more, you can always revisit our in the help portal, our supported solutions, our expert portal. In the meantime, it's more than 90 plus services. And in the following slides and also my demo, I purely focus on the BTP parts. So there is more, feel free to explore it. So everything starts, and here we are following the problem resolution and detection and resolution process is from an inbound signal. So this can be a metric, it can be a configuration item where something happens, it can be log entries, traces, events, as well as alerts. And based on these inbound signals, we start the problem detections based on various use cases. In general, there are two types of use cases. On the one hand side, the ones which are product specific, and on the other hand side, the ones which are more agnostic, so which you can use on top. And with the synthetic user monitoring, to start with this one, to see how an application is executed, to do a proactive monitoring based on scripts which are regularly executed and giving you a heads up. But let's quickly start at the top. So business process monitoring is supporting you alongside your business processes, looking at business entities such as sales documents and so on, and following that entire process, because process continuity and continue in general is what we are supporting you with and what is important also for your business. Followed by the integration and exception monitoring. Here we are looking or we are providing two aspects, covering on the one hand side the integrations. So whenever components are working together, are exchanging messages, there are interfaces, for example, or it's a replication of your master data or your employee data. This is where integration monitoring supports you, as well as the exception monitoring, where I will also demo a little later on how an exception in your custom-built BTP application is then raised and can be found on our end so that you can react to a certain situation. If we are talking about interactions of the users, so clicks of the users, how are users using an application and experiencing the performance, this is where you can gain further insights in the real user monitoring. Followed by our capability of the job and automation monitoring. This is a quite well-known domain from my perspective. So is it jobs, is it automations you can monitor? Then followed by the latest member in the family. This is configuration and security analysis, where you then also will get insights on the one hand side, certain recommendations which we are giving, as well as configurations which were done and are compared to a certain pattern, giving you recommendations where to look at or if these were changed, and followed by health monitoring, which I will also show you in a moment, which is providing a technical matrix with which you can derive insights on the health of your application. All these use cases, so in the area of problem detection, are then providing and are centralized use in the intelligent event processing. So this is the problem routing, and this is for all use cases the similar manner. You then have the option to create an alert, to make use of the notification management, to link to a certain detected problem, also operations automation. So if there are automated steps which can be directly started, you can initiate them from here, as well as you can make use of the external API management, where you then can use APIs like resource notification to react if a metric changes, for example, or where you can then trigger a chat message, an email, tasks, tickets. So there's a lot to explore for you and a lot to make use of to then initiate the problem resolution, and this is in the part of the outbound integration. Last but not least, there are two further areas. On the one hand side, the business service management, which is an overarching functionality. In here, you can then also find information from the SAP for me. So based on the availability of your subscribed cloud services also within our application, reflected in the use cases. And last but not least, there are also analytics and intelligence functionality, which you can then make use of. How is this now working together? And this will be the last slide before I'll jump to the demo. Whenever we are talking about central observability and the problem detection, this is what we offer in the SAP Cloud ALM as well as in the Focus Run. And if we are talking about problem resolution, this is then the local observability, and we do also provide context-sensitive jump-in links so that you can directly from a detected problem react to it. Both areas are using telemetry data, and these telemetry data are then coming, as you can see here, based on some examples from the BTP and the services which are subscribed on the BTP. May it be DataSphere, the BTP Neo ABAP environment, as well as Cloud Foundry environment for sure. SAP HANA Cloud, SAP Integration Suite, SAP Analytics Cloud, Build Process Automation, and I can now proceed that entire list. Believe me, I would find much more names and you will still miss some, but you always have the option to check out our expert portal as well as the supported solutions, which of your services are supported. And if there is anything missing, later on you will also see our influence campaign. So feel free to provide us feedback here so that we can incorporate this and revisit and try our best to make it part of our planning. So how is this looking in action? For the demo, I have prepared a custom built BTP application. This custom built BTP application is a sample which you might know from the past. So this is the so-called S-Flight example, but it's not the ABAP-based anymore. It's now the Cloud Foundry-based one with the Java implementation, and this is also available in our public Git repositories. So you can simply clone that repository, deploy it in your environment, and then you get two tiles. These two applications we have embedded in a workzone Launchpad service. This is the entry point. And from here, you can then directly use these applications. And I'm here not now explaining the application itself. It's S-Flight, it's flight bookings in a certain status, but I am monitoring my interactions in this application. So I do now a few clicks, and these clicks you can then see later on or in a moment monitored in the SAP Cloud ALM. So I'll filter a bit more on the flights. This is a UI5 front end. So here it is about getting the information from the front end receiver itself, as well. What we also do have in that app in here is detailed data on the flight bookings. And what is really then an advantage from my point of view, if you do not yet have your own app, which you could directly start to monitor, here you also do get some sample data, some records. So no, we weren't that busy and really created these many flight bookings. These are also contained in, so it's quite easy to start with the topic. This is the first application. The second application is around traveling, handling all these travels and travel bookings. And in here, we have interactions, and luckily we also have an error in here. So an accepted travel cannot be rejected. And this is an error message which you would like as an administrator to also monitor, react to, and in case this is not planned, improve your app and then make use of the entire process, which also was shown by Boris, how you can then deploy changes to your app in a controlled manner, as well as bringing the relevant security and automation in. So now I did some clicks, and now proceeding with the Cloud ALM and the Launchpad, you can see in that operations area all the use cases which we're providing. So looking at a certain situation from a perspective, and I would like now to start with the health monitoring. So the health monitoring provides technical metrics, and based on these technical metrics, insights. As we were talking about a Cloud Foundry environment, and yes, I prepared a traffic light for you. We are looking now at the travel agency. This travel agency is the sub account, and in the sub account, we have currently running 2 applications. One is in the Java implemented one. This is our travel agency, as well as a second Node.js application. So you can see we have metrics for both. And in the health monitoring itself, you can then have a look, for example, into the memory behavior. So here you can see how the memory was released and exceeded. You can also extend that one. And if you now would like to see more for this metric, for example, and here jumping from the global perspective to the local observability, if you have instrumented the SAP Cloud Logging Service, then you can also jump from here, context sensitive, into the cloud logging, and can then explore more details on the memory usage. And no, I won't explain it here, but the experts who are listening now will directly recognize what is possible in here and what you can do more. And in addition, also by adding filters, changing filters, and so on. What we also do provide in here in the tools area, and let me close this one. Here you also have that central starting point in a dashboard where you can get an overview on that sub account. So just giving an impression how smoothless the global perspective in the Cloud ALM can be then linked to the local observability. On top, what you can do is then also schedule the threshold. So what is a critical value and when it turns from warning to critical, as well as activate the alerting. And so that you've seen at least an alert in here also. And since someone confirmed mine, I'll show you an exception-based alert. So this is the health monitoring part. Besides this one, that we would like to see it or observe the app from a technical perspective, we also do have the option to look into the integration and exception monitoring. If you remember, I used that reject button, which wasn't applicable. So now we can see which exceptions occurred here in the travel agency. And there are 2 apps running. We'll now here look at the Java application log, and below you can see the list of applications. You can also see the evolution in the last 24 hours. So assuming you deployed an app change and the app is now having a changed behavior, you can also compare this. We have an evolution of the last 7 days and more. You can filter. And here you also do have very technical details around the context of that exception. When was it raised? So is it from a resource perspective? Also my user context, correlation IDs, but also the call stack. So, and this is what you then can follow up on and see where that exception was raised, or also here jumping context sensitive into the open in the open search-based SAP Cloud logging service and what is ongoing here currently. You can also then remove a filter and you can see we have regularly here exceptions. So it's a good follow-up for me then also to reach out to the team and to see what is ongoing here. And last but not least, as I was talking about real user interactions and clicks, if I'm now going to the real user monitoring, and here I would like to also show you not another scope selection. Instead, I would like to have a look at the last 2 hours. We can see that for our build work zone service, and that was the launchpad where the apps were embedded, we have UI5 requests. And I was using also the analytics application. And in here, and this is something which you have to know, I admit this one, that button at the top, which I was clicking, is behind that action name. A developer can put a meaningful name in here. In our environment, it's not the perfect name, but we can then see in here, for example, that request from, let's see, 3:49 and 45 seconds. This was me clicking in the application. I'll also zoom out a bit because what you can see here is that my request started in a UI5 frontend. It was then handled by the S-Flight SFO service. And then afterwards, we had interactions which were HTTPS based, as well as we had some interactions with the database and providing the data. And we can see where the most time of that request was spent. And also from here, we can then jump into the cloud logging to see more details. We can also check out what else did the respective user click and be also sure I'm allowed to see sensitive data. That's why I can see my username and my email address. This is not per default in, so this needs explicitly be assigned based on authorizations. So from here also the option to jump to the cloud logging. And as I also mentioned, I'll show you an exception or an alert which was created based on such an exception. Quickly jumping back to my exception monitoring case. Here is the area of the alerting and the alert inbox. And in this area, we should have some alerts. They are also partially grouped. If I now open the most recent one, we then also get some more alert details. And in these alert details, which you will see in a moment, best also directly my click. Otherwise, showing it to you in the list mode. And as we are good in time, we can wait a little bit for the list. And here you can see, for example, really travel begin was not provided, so can be application, but can also be more technical things. And if you define such an alert, then you can say, should an email be created? Should a chat message be created in a Teams channel? Should it be an operations automations which should be triggered or a ticket created? And this alert inbox and this behavior is shared by all the use cases. With respect to the time, there's more for you to explore. So besides that, you for sure now have seen this on an example from the health monitoring. These are the services or the BTP services which we support for the health monitoring. So be it integration suite, be it the latest family member with the SAP data sphere in the SAP build area, as well as monitoring the Cloud ALM itself. There are capabilities also available to monitor your custom build applications, and recapping here also the jump-in link. I showed you now 3 demos. There's more which you can have a look at, focusing on all our capabilities as well as BTP services. So you can also sneak into the business synthetic user monitoring, as well as the configuration and security analysis, which I have not yet shown here. And what is also as part of our openness, so the data which we are collecting is also something which we are providing via the APIs. And there are various API types available. So on the one hand side, the analytics APIs, where you then can get see and read in the end our collected metrics and some values. Then we do have also raw data APIs as well. There is an option to read your landscape and so-called transactional APIs, which are more focusing towards events, so which events were created. You can read them, you can use them somewhere else, or you can also provide us input so that a certain service is not available by such informations. Last but not least, integration scenarios. And with this, as I mentioned, if there's anything you would like to share with us, make use of our influence campaigns. They are continuously running. We are monitoring them. We are reacting to the feedback. And this also helps us with the prioritization of topics where we are working on. So this is really your channel to us, besides that you can contact us. And with this, I'll hand it back to Boris. And
amazing, amazing. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. I really love the demo because it really shows the interplay between SAP Cloud ALM as central observability and operations platform with SAP Business Technology Platform on so many levels, right? I mean, you get really a hold on, of the complete end-to-end application, and you can nevertheless seamless vertically perform a deep dive into what is happening then on the parts that run on BTP. That's really amazing. So thanks a lot again, Stephanie. And with that, I want to wrap up so that we still have some time for our questions. So what shall you take with me? So I hope you have seen that the SAP BTP Guidance Framework has a lot to offer for administrators as well, right? I mean, you can use the SAP BTP Administrator Guide as starting point to learn more about the duties, the tasks that will end up on your desk, and also get best practices on how to handle those, right? You get best practices on how to onboard to BTP, understanding the concepts, what tasks you have to handle, how to enable your teams then to onboard as easy by automating, for example, then corresponding account provisioning and so on. You understand how to run and operate your applications on a platform. You can get insights on how to manage costs, which of course also is a very important aspect. You can also see how you as an administrator can enable your teams to make best use of the business technology platform, for example, by enabling them, saying, okay, you set up a pipeline or point them to the pipeline as a service offering, and nevertheless have then control as soon as they come up with a release candidate when it comes to propagate them towards production. You can also see how you can evolve by time, meaning starting, gaining first experience, and then trying to reduce manual efforts, right? I've mentioned before this automation of account provisioning, but as you have seen also what Stephanie outlined, I mean, there might come issues or you see service degradations and so on. And first, of course, you will first figure out how to cope with them. And afterwards, you should do some kind of retrospective, think about what you did. And if you want to put that into some kind of automated action, and whenever an alert comes up from the platform that a similar issue comes up, then SAP Cloud ALM could not only bring that up in the monitoring, but could then also trigger some operation flows being performed then on SAP BTP directly, if you like auto-scaling or something like that, or gathering log files for further analysis if it should happen over the weekend or whatever. Right? And with that, we also came to the second learning. And thanks a lot again, Stephanie, where you could really experience live on the demo the central role SAP Cloud ALM does play as operations platform for the SAP portfolio. You can also bring in third-party data, but also there's a very broad coverage around SAP BTP scenarios, and that complements the benefits or the capabilities SAP Cloud ALM does bring to also handle the delivery in the implementation part. If you now want to make the next steps, we have also some learning journeys for you. So there's one especially also for administrating SAP Business Technology Platform. Here's a link. I think, maybe I give you a short glimpse on it as we have some time before we come to Q&A. But very briefly, you see it's really a mix of videos and lectures and quizzes as well that help you to really verify that you understood the most important key points. You see around, again, responsibilities, around architecturing, meaning the account model, runtime environments, managing the different environments, be it Cloud Foundry, Kyma, or the SAP BTP ABAP environment, security aspects here with identity and access management, how to configure and onboard new environments here with, for example, also information on Terraform, connectivity, also observability and monitoring, and then finally cost and usage management. So it's available in the SAP Learning portal. Just give it a try. And we have also further learning journeys there around the other topics, be it if you want to learn more about the DevOps approach around SAP Cloud ALM, be it for getting an overview on all the capabilities, or also having a deep dive on the operations part. With that, thanks a lot for your interest. You get, of course, slides and also our contact information. I want to stress that also our colleague Niklas Siemer did support us in preparing our session. So thanks a lot to Niklas. Appreciate it. And with that, I would say we come over to the questions. Tanya, were there any questions in the chat?
Yes, definitely. But first of all, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And before going to the questions, we don't have much time. So in case we don't have time to answer all the questions, we will answer them in the comments area underneath this video. So just go look for them in case we don't answer them now. Now, let me have a look. So the first question is, can we use the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service to push integration iFlow to GitHub?
Right, that's a very good question. And for the time being, that is not yet the case, but we are working on that and are very interested in further evolving that. Right now, it's a very simple pipeline. Unfortunately, the SAP Integration Suite does not have a direct integration into GitHub. There are some best practices you can find in the SAP community. But if you're interested or you want to voice your request, you can reach out to me as well. And we are happy to engage with our ideas in that direction with you and get your input, and also involved in the SAP Integration Suite colleagues, of course, into the whole story.
Thank you. And then, does Cloud ALM have an internal email server, or do we have to connect to a local email server that the client uses to send out notification emails?
These notifications are handled by services which we do provide. So you simply need to configure which emails you would like to receive, and you need to maintain the notification recipients. As you might know, sending emails is a data privacy topic. So you need to register the email addresses or persons who would like to get that email. And once this is done, and this confirmation is done by the user, it's a single click to be renewed every year, but it's a tiny part of it, then you get these emails. So it's nothing to be connected from your end. If you would like to have notifications in a Teams channel, then for sure, yes, it's then communicating with a webhook, and based on the Microsoft services or licenses which you do have, that it is in. If you would like to create a ticket to compromise that entire story, you have to have the ticketing system. We have provided pre-built some mappings, which you can then easier use for setup. But if it is an own system or a system which we do not have a mapping, you can also create an own mapping. So no, it's not your email server handling these emails. It's just your email server receiving these emails and dispatching them to the end users.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next one is, how many of the roughly 90 BTP services are covered in configuration and security analysis?
That is a very good question. I'll take that offline, and we can provide the answer in the chat. These 90 services are overall what we 90 plus, and we are releasing twice per month services and content. So it's continuously growing what we offer. We know, especially for the CSA, there is at least in Q1 3 more services coming, as per my understanding. So everything around the planning is under disclaimer, but if you subscribe in the help, that supported solution area, you are notified whenever something is available. So, but I'll take that as a challenge and we'll look up how many are supported in CSA.
Great, thank you so much, Stephanie. Next question is, could you please cover scenario of Cloud ALM monitoring Ariba CIG?
Okay, so as by heart, I know that we support some parts of Ariba in the integration and exception monitoring, because this is also around the communications. I know that we are currently also working with further services. So we always call them services, LOBs, and teams providing these products to you as a customer. These are the products which we have to integrate, onboard, and provide contents. So there's more to come. If there is a certain area of Ariba you are looking for, we would really appreciate your influence request here, because then we can take the customer voice to the teams being involved and also taking this as motivation to get this implemented and delivered to you.
Great, thank you. One very last question is there any feature Cloud ALM that focuses on connected systems from security coverage perspective, like hot new security nodes?
That is a good point. What we have in operations, so security recommendation, this would be something which you can find in CSA. If it is about monitor, so for example, we also offer monitoring for the destination service. This is connectivity, but not everything around. But if it is about hot news and consuming nodes, this is at least not something which we directly have in the operations area. But I would guess you could find something in the service area, but I would need to check on that one, as we have more than 250 microservices, so a single person can't know all the details. So I'm just honest, but we have a lot of documentation in. So if you search, you will either find it in the expert portal, in our application help. This is also a lot of contents in, and it's continuously growing and growing. And if not, use the influence to let us know where we should work on.
Thank you so much. We are now on top of the hour, already over. And so therefore, let me again thank you so much, Stephanie and Boris, for your excellent presentation. And last but not least, a very warm thank you to all attendees for joining. I hope to see you again next week at one of our sessions and in the coming months as well. And with this, have a great day, a great evening, depending on where you are.
Thank you, Tanya, for hosting.
My pleasure.